Hey guys, so for today's vlog, I'm going to talk about Sarah Schulman's gentrification of the mind. And so, for the first half of this book, the central claim that I got from her was that gentrification was only possible because of AIDS. In New York, during the AIDS crisis, homosexuals specifically were forced out of their homes, basically out of their rights because of the government and the ignorance of the US society in general that allowed for AIDS to get as bad as it did because it didn't get the proper knowledge and it didn't get the proper attention it needed to help aid those people. Um, and so, like I said, gentrification was only possible because of the AIDS epidemic. So for chapter one, the first big quote that I grabbed that I wanted to analyze was on page 26, and it says, quote, "So the appearance and rapid spread of AIDS and consequential death rates coincidentally enhanced the gentrification process that was already underway." And so, like I said, I think this is her claim. I took this quote as her central claim because the author, like I said, she says that gentrification only happened because of the spread of AIDS. And she says this a lot in chapter one. This is how I kind of knew it was her claim, and this is what she was trying to get throughout the whole first half of this book. And in chapter one, I also noticed that she establishes her voice a lot. You can hear her sense of anger and urgency when she's relaying this information. This is not a light topic for her. This is something she's very passionate about, and you can definitely get this when trying to hear her voice throughout this chapter. The second quote I got from chapter one was on page 35, and it says, in gentrification, the process was being reversed, with financial incentives and social policies designed to replace one kind of human being with another. And so here I think the author is really targeting her audience. She knows that this book is going to be read by someone like me who's uneducated in the topic of AIDS. And she puts gentrification in the most simplistic way. She doesn't sugarcoat it, and then she shows the raw truth behind it, that it's just someone replacing one human with a different human. And so I think by using that word replacing in terms of human lives, lets her express how some homosexuals were being taken advantage of during this time. And throughout this chapter, she also really targets the federal government for not doing more. In a sense, I feel like she's letting off steam and anger towards them. And for one instance, she actually calls out Barack Obama for not funding it the way he should have during his first term. And I think this is just a way for her to express her feelings about it, especially since the federal government didn't do everything that they should. So jumping into chapter two, one of the first main quotes I found was on page 36, and it's actually the opener to this chapter. It says, quote, "Key to gentrification mentality is the replacement of complex realities with simplistic ones." And I think she uses this as her opener to compare the two lives at the time. So it was people with AIDS who lived the complex realities, who were often struggling with their rent, who were oppressed and they were degraded. And then it shows the other lives that were the, quote, simplistic lives, who were the upper middle class, who took advantage of these newly renovated apartments, these new restaurants, and had all this luxury things. And it's outlined a more simplistic life to society. And here again, in this quote, she uses the word replacement. And like she did it in chapter one, it expresses how degraded homosexuals were. And I think this really helped her get her point across, to show how poorly treated they were. And this just shows what gentrification was and what it is, and how homosexuals were being replaced and torn out of their homes, just for the upper and middle class. So the next quote that I thought I needed to address was on page 46. And it says, quote, "In this way, 9/11 is the gentrification of AIDS." It is the centerpiece of supremacy ideology, the idea that one person's life is more important than another's. So this quote was really intriguing just because I think this would upset a lot of people, just because it's comparing the AIDS epidemic to a terrorist attack. And if you don't read the context behind this and you just read that quote, you'd understand. I could understand how someone would get upset, but she's not wrong when she does this comparison. The AIDS epidemic led to thousands of deaths, thousands and thousands of deaths. I mean, as did 9/11, but it didn't get the proper attention that it needed, and it didn't get the recognition. And she states the word supremacy, which does have a negative connotation, and I think it's targeting those who gentrified New York, and it's calling those people supremacists for taking advantage of homosexuals the way that they did. So for chapter 3, I'm going to start off with another quote, and here the quote was on page 69, and she says, quote, "And all along it has puzzled me that the AIDS experience is not recognized as an American experience. Well, for me, it is the American experience." And so here with this quote, I think she tries to be more personal with the reader. In this chapter, she tells more personal stories of those who she really connected with during the time. And she shows who she met, how they died, when they died, and the impact they just made on her life in general. And I think it was important for her to do this because it allowed her to connect more with her readers. So with us and her sharing these stories allowed her to open up so we could see who she really was and what she was actually going through at this time. She focuses less in this chapter on how messed up the AIDS epidemic was and how it affected her more as a person. And I think for me, that really gave me insight to how this whole thing affected her instead of society as a whole. And I think this really shows that America wasn't really affected by this, but it was just that group of people in New York and San Francisco that really got traumatized by this whole epidemic. And it wasn't an American experience, it was her experience, as it was thousands of other people's experiences. But America did not see that at the time, and they still don't.